Welcome to the Entrepreneur Stories podcast. Jonathan Herps is your host. He is a strategic advisor, coach, and mentor to entrepreneurial founders, business owners, and CEOs. In this podcast, he chats with entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies.
Hello again. Welcome to Entrepreneur Stories podcast. My great pleasure today to introduce Peter Baily, who's Managing Director of Narellan Pools. And welcome, Peter. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Jonathan. Good to be here.
And very, very good to have you here. I'm going to start this off by saying I've got a bit of knowledge about Narellan Pools. Anybody from New South Wales would think Narellan Pools is a little place in Narellan. Well, in fact, this company is not at all, and Peter's going to explain that in a moment. But in the middle of COVID, I had a 15-meter pool craned over the top of my house from Narellan and installed in the back of our house. So we've had one for 3 years, and I can highly recommend the visit. So thank you.
It's good. It's good to hear. Always, we love it. We love a satisfied customer.
Yeah, well, I am one. So listen, Peter, why don't we tell us a bit about your journey so far to be Managing Director of Narellan Pools, and a bit about the company, if you can.
Yeah, well, let me start with the company first. That's probably a good place to start. And as you sort of alluded to, Narellan Pools, it's as good as started in Narellan, which is a suburb of Sydney. That's where the branding came from. And it was just a guy who, back in 1972, who used to build pools and just decided this fiberglass thing was sort of emerging. And he decided to build a fiberglass pool in his back shed. And he built that, and then he sold it and he installed it. And then he thought, I'll do that again. And so it went. It was a pretty small business and a small business for many years. He sold that business on to the Meyer family, not Myers as in the department store, but a family. They sort of grew it and a bit, and then it went from father and uncle to son, to Chris Meyer, who probably was the one who really made the business start to have some sophistication and grow. And here we are, sort of a bit over 50 years later, and the business now is part of a US NASDAQ-Listed group. So it's been quite a journey. And I think if you think through all those transitions, I joined the business 8 years ago. I think it was a really good small family business. Had some great bones, but still probably struggled from time to time with various issues. And we really set about then investing in the business, growing the business. We sort of sorted out Australia, and Australia became very strong. And then we did the same in New Zealand, ended up building a manufacturing facility in New Zealand. Then we did the same in Canada, and we did all this pretty rapidly. And I think it was then that the US was next on the cards, and we had a look at how we might do the US, and Latham Pool Products, which is the largest pool manufacturer in North America, were pretty interested in our model and what we did. And in the end, we joined with them. And then that was 2019, 2021, Latham then listed on the NASDAQ. So for me, having been here for 8 years, it's been quite a journey from really, I think, sort of good small family business through to NASDAQ listed company. I think the business, as I said, had really good bones, and I think we really set about sort of building scale, and that really transformed the business over a relatively short period of time, given the history of the business.
And there's a bit more to it as well, because you've also got a franchise model.
Yeah, so it's quite a complex business in some respects. At our core, we are a manufacturer. We're a manufacturer of fiberglass swimming pools. They're big, they're difficult to move around. So logistics is important to us, but our distribution model is a franchise model, and that works really well for us. And so franchising is one of the disciplines that we have to also be very good at. And I think the fourth one I'd probably put in there is marketing. We probably set ourselves apart in the industry in that we are both a franchisor and a very good marketer. So a lot of the business that we generate is generated through our sort of marketing machine.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I may have mentioned this already, but it's a fabulous experience when you sit here with an enormous crane lifting a fiberglass pool over the roof of your house into the back garden. It gives you talk about logistics. It gives you a whole different perspective.
Yeah, there's a bit of theatre in that. I put one into my backyard, and had half my neighbours in my backyard giving it a clap when it touched down. So there's quite a bit of theatre to it, but it's what our guys do every day of the week. Becomes a bit normal to us, but
they do it well.
Yeah.
So tell me, if you had to start from scratch, Are there aspects of your personal or business leadership development that you prioritize more?
Look, good question, and I think I've been pretty lucky in some respects. I started life in chartered accounting, and that's a pretty heavy sort of developmental environment. You normally will get your professional qualifications and all those sorts of things. I then knew that that wasn't where I wanted to spend my life, and joined a franchise business as it happened, as financial controller. And one of the things I did in that fairly early on is I did a course it was called the Enterprise Workshop. I'm not even sure if it's around today, but it was really about taking a business idea, building a business plan around it, through to sort of commercializations. This was a competition. You presented to a panel of judges, and that's where I kind of learnt to take my accounting skills, if you like, into fully functioning business skills, sort of top to bottom of how to run a business. I then kind of got lucky in other roles to pick up a really couple of good leadership courses along the way. And I think all of those probably came to me sort of the right stage in life and stage in career, that I think it's set me in pretty good stead, for the various roles that I've taken. And so I think then, if I think through my history, I certainly wasn't always good at people leadership, but I think at the end of the day, you've got to learn it as you go. And that's a skill that I've been lucky enough to kind of exercise, if you like, as I've probably grown into bigger and more senior roles.
Yeah, it's a really good point you made though, Ben, which is, are leaders born or do you learn along the way? And I'm a strong believer in the learning, and you can be taught to be a leader.
Yeah, when I think about some of my performance conversations back in the early days, they work great. But you persist at it and get better over time.
Very much so. Very much so. So tell me, what qualities do you look for in employees, and how do you foster a positive culture within the business?
Well, I think I'd start with culture, and culture is pretty good, pretty important to us in this business, Narellan Pools. And I think I walked into an organization that I think had very good cultural bones or systems. So for us, we talk about our purpose, and we build the business around that purpose. We're big on values, and these are values we live rather than perhaps just putting them on the wall. And standards. Those would be sort of our three cultural pillars, if you like, that we use. And so I think we use those, and we think about the performance environment that we build for the team. And so when we're recruiting people, if you can't fit into that cultural paradigm, then this is probably not the place for you to work. And so I think that's the first gate to get through, if you like. And then I think we think about great commercial skills. Can you make really good commercial decisions? Assess a situation, find a way through that. I think experience has taught me that not everyone can. And so we look for people with good commercial acumen, who are great leaders, build good teams around them, and below them, and really get their hands dirty. Our business is big enough that we've got all the people we would have in the usual spots, but not so big that you don't have to sort of move around various aspects that might be a little bit outside of your remit. So for us, we look for people who can do stuff. And
of course, you've got two distinct type of employees as well.
That's right.
Like that, what about 40 white collar and a couple of hundred blue collar workers in the manufacturing area?
Yeah, a few less in manufacturing, but yep. And I can think of many times when we were setting up new factories, when we're building new products, we just got guys who'll get in there and say, well, what about this? Let's try that and give it a go. And that's the stuff that we love. People who are prepared to have a go, get their hands dirty, give it their best shot. Those are people who work well in our organization.
Great, thank you. So what do you think has been your biggest learning as a business leader?
Well, I think most recently, I think would just be almost the complexity now of operating, of doing business. I think the last 3 years, right, have been a bit tumultuous in the environment we've operated. But I think you put the regulatory on top of that. I think just generally, it's getting a little harder to do business, which I think means you've got to kind of do it a bit more by the book. So if I think through our business, things like safety, we're investing heavily. We don't take any shortcuts with that. We're quite a high risk business in some of the things we do. I think industrial relations, even, these environments continue to get more complex. even marketing. I talked about the fact that marketing is one of our sort of important pillars. I love the stuff you can do nowadays and the opportunities that exist, but they are rapidly changing. So I think for us, it's being able to adapt to increasingly complex and changing environments is something that we focus on, and it's probably one of the big sort of pivots I think that I've had to think through over the last few years.
And particularly now with quarterly reporting for internationally, I would imagine that adds significant complexity.
Yeah, it does. Being part of a US business, let alone a listed US business, it's super important. We're across all of the numbers and all the things that we need to be across, and we certainly have requirements of reporting that through to our US head office so they can comply with all the things that they need to comply with.
And so this probably leads on from there, Peter, but what do you see as your main challenges in the business now and going forward?
Well, I think almost getting back to business as usual, right? And you don't tend to hear that term used too often because it's been a while since we've seen it, I think. But for us, I think it's starting to get back into a usual rhythm almost. Maybe rhythm's not quite the right word, but there's been plenty of challenges in our industry from high demand and more subdued economies, and how do we adapt and adjust the business. Raw material pricing's changed, supply chains have changed, consumer confidence has been impacted. How do we deal with all that stuff and set up the right environment for the business to really flourish in what is almost I think a new environment. So I think for us, probably the thing we really get focused on is how do we adapt to change in a more rapidly changing world. And when you run a franchise network, it's not just about the people who might be here at the office. It's about all of our franchisees, and it's about our franchisees teams. And I often talk about those who can adapt to change the fastest. I think will be the ones who will prosper the greatest. So we talk about that with our franchisees and help them adapt to what has been a significant changes in the marketplace in which they operate.
It's interesting you say that. I wrote a blog the other day about speed. And those who are going to do really well will be the ones who can move at speed. Obviously, not neglecting the OH&S and the safety and those key pieces, but as you say, it's a different market. And I just look at your business. You went through, I wouldn't call it boom and bust, but 2021, 22 type thing. Huge demand, and suddenly this year it was in Europe. And I'm assuming your demand is all over the place at the moment.
Yeah, it's certainly been from demand we just couldn't keep up with. Simply, we couldn't scale the business fast enough to keep up with the demand. It's been a ride, and I think again I see some franchisees who just have adapted to that so fast and done so well off the back of that. And others that have been a little slower, and you can just see the impact that has on performance. So I agree. I think it's speed, certainly part of it. I think it's that willingness to say, okay, it's changed. I'm not going to dwell on this too long. I'm going to reposition based on what's in front of me now. I think is critical. Yeah,
that ability to pivot is one of the key success factors I find with some of my clients.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So tell me, when you think of the word successful, who comes to mind and why?
Well, I think I'd probably talk to model rather than person, and this is my own personal bias for many years in the industry, but I think I talk to the franchise model, right? And I look at franchise businesses and the good ones. I think they just do so well. And if you're thinking about building scale, you don't need to necessarily become a franchise, but I think there's some great lessons in that model that people can learn from. What are the things that are important to a franchise business, and how do you start to emulate those in your business? I think everyone knows who the great franchise businesses are out there, and some of the things they do super well is because some of the systems that they build, the way in which they go about it, the model they sort of operate under. So I think it'd be useful for people to think about what some of those disciplines or structures might be. Things like marketing and brand and systems, how you replicate, your business, depending on what kind of business it is. We choose to franchise the distribution, the sale and installation of pools. We do through a franchise model, and that's a great model for us. We've got a group of franchisees that are supporting each other. None of them compete with each other, and they are simply all doing that same piece in their territory. And it's been a great builder of scale for us.
I can understand that having seen it. So tell me, are you a reader? Do you listen to podcasts? What would you recommend?
Look, I'm not the world's greatest reader. I have a good stack of books, but I don't tend to spend enough time reading them often. But I think, look, I'm a big fan of Good to Great. It's one I keep kind of going back to, as I'm sure many do.
Jim Collins, yep.
Yeah, Jim Collins. One I read a little while ago was Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath. I don't know if you've come across that one.
No.
Good read. It's the model of how can Davids win? How can the small beat the big almost? The story of an underdog and what that can mean around breaking through adversity was one that I think resonated with me, both at an individual level but also at a corporate level. I quite like some of the McKinsey consulting emails. I subscribe to those. There's a lot that aren't relevant, but there's a lot that is. I think you kind of want to see what's happening, in the sort of management consulting world or the corporate thinking. I think that's a good place to get some of that. Those are the sort of key things I do.
Okay. Sorry, I'm apologising to you now. I had a chat with your HR manager earlier, and you're getting a new book on Monday.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Patrick Lenciani, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Great. All right. Well,
I'm happy you enjoy it and get something out of that.
I have heard about it, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. So last question, any last piece of advice or parting words for business owners who are looking to grow?
Look, I think for us, it was interesting. We when I joined the business, we spent a bit of time on planning, strategic plan, and had a great plan, and then we tried to execute it and it didn't work. So I think we then concentrated on people. So I think for me, it's have a great plan with then great people behind it to implement. But those are the things I think that have worked well for us in our business. And if you don't have the right people to execute the plan, think through how you might improve that, develop that. I think for us also then don't be afraid to separate those who may be good strategic operators, who may be good executors of the new, against those who might be more the transactional that kind of keep the business rolling day to day. I don't think everyone needs to be the new business leader or the strategic leader of the business. Think through who's got capacity to do new and who doesn't. And then I think for us also, we're pretty fluid with the plan. I think that's been important for us over the last few years. We do a quarterly review, and if something's not working anymore or the environment has changed, then we are not afraid to change the plan. And so we have this 13-week mindset around how we execute on our plans, and then a 13-week sort of review cycle as well to see whether we need to make a change to the way we do what we do.
Great advice there. People, I really like the point about the difference between a project manager versus who will scope out change and I won't call them a day-to-day manager, but someone then handing over to people who make it business as usual. And you're absolutely correct. It's different skill sets.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you so much.
Been a pleasure.
I've really enjoyed the conversation as I always do.
Good. Likewise.
Thank you.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you watch/listen. It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the learning gets. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in entrepreneur stories of scaling up. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to admin@scaleupgrowth.co. Put "be a guest" in the subject line and tell me a little about yourself. If you want to gauge where your business growth potential is and identify where the biggest opportunities in your business lie, or where the key needs that you need to concentrate on right now are, take our assessment where you will receive personalized advice for improvement. It's quick and free. Go to scaleupgrowth.scoreapp.com. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, I love coaching and get the best outcomes that way. Send me an email at jonathan@scaleupgrowth.co and put one-to-one in the heading. Tell me a bit about your business and let's see how we can apply a great strategy for your business. So that's it for this week. Tune in next time for more great learnings from a scaling entrepreneur.